the frustration, the anger, the anxiety, the fear, the guilt, the shame, the devastation, the grief, the sense of loss. That is a signal. It is emotional energy. It is energetic entities. It's a resource. It's data. And it's commonly inspired when we go through change. Change is difficult. It is very often difficult because it's colored by these difficult emotions.
Welcome back to Relationships at Work, your guide to building workplace connections and avoiding leadership blind spots. I'm your host, Russel, a communications and leadership nerd with a couple of very successful decades of experience in both of those areas, and a whole heap of that curiosity that we all need on how we can make the workplace a better place. If you're a leader trying to understand and improve your impact on work culture and the employee experience, you're in the right place. One experience we can never seem to avoid is change. It seemed to come on so gradually a decade or so ago. It was almost adorable how frequently it happened. And now it seems like it's an ongoing process, whether it's reorgs, whether it's new technology, new bosses, new responsibilities. Oh, wait, here's remote work, here's hybrid work, and on and on and on and on. It's hard to get excited about it. But guess what? We need to. Research in 2022 for Frontiers in Psychology found that successful organizational change, which is quite rare actually, successful organizational change, it really depends on employees feeling positive about and willing to adopt the proposed changes. Sure, that is easier said than done, but I got curious. So earlier this year at the Work Human Conference in Austin, I had the absolute pleasure of talking with today's guest about how we can be more enthusiastic about change. Change is really difficult. It's hard. And conversations like this will help. Hold on. And on the show today, we have Cassandra Worthy, and here is why she is awesome. She's a keynote speaker, author, consultant, and CEO of Change Enthusiasm Global, helping organizations face the emotional landscape of change head on, resulting in faster emotional processing and transformation success. Clients of hers have included Fortune 500 organizations like Procter & Gamble, Allstate, Cisco, Google. Her book, Change Enthusiasm: How to Harness the Power of Emotion for Leadership and Success, also introduces a growth mindset practice to view change as a gift. Imagine that. She's a LinkedIn learning instructor, and she's a strategic advisor for Mudita Venture Partners, who invest in early stage software companies that advance humanity. This all gets me really excited, and I'm happy to introduce Cassandra. Hi, Cassandra.
What it do?
Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Russell.
Before we get anywhere,
Sure.
I have to ask you a question that I ask all of my guests with dramatic flair. What is your best or worst employee experience?
Ay vey. You for this too, Russell.
I did 5 minutes ago. You should be so prepared by now.
I know. So I'm going to do the thing that the majority of your
Guess
majority
who?
of your guests do. Because I always go, right, you have good managers and you have bad managers.
Sure.
I learned so much from the bad managers because they exemplify what I don't want to be, knowing that I have an aspiration to lead others. And so we had, in my prior experience before I founded my consulting company, but there was a leader of all of global operations. I worked in a consumer packaged goods, big company. And he was so brash. He was so, he only paid attention to his direct reports. I would be sitting in a review, sharing about the technology, the innovation that my team is bringing. I'm the one with all the knowledge and the expertise. He would direct all of his questions to my manager, who was another older white man, by the way, and rarely ever look at me. And it just made me feel unseen. It made me feel unvalued, and that he couldn't care less who was doing the work. And he didn't have any sense of value from me and only wanted to get value from the white man direct report that he had. And it made me feel invisible. It was terrible. And yeah, so I strive to never be that way and to look for those individuals who might not say as much in the room, maybe those who are more introverted, but they have a wealth of knowledge. and follow up with them after the meeting. I noticed you didn't say much, but I'm really curious to hear what your thoughts are. Having those one-on-ones, those follow-ups. I always want individuals that I work with, that I work around, to feel seen and strive to understand those individuals. Because when you do, you can understand their innate strengths and the value that they bring, and then how you can help them unleash it. And then that's better for everybody.
Did you feel that they hid behind, was it a hierarchy thing? Was it, I feel because I did the things that put me on this position in an org chart that gave me that, you need to earn your way to get to my level to talk to me?
I think there was a mix of things. I think that was involved. I also think that there was either unconscious or conscious racial bias.
Sure.
He was an individual who surrounded himself with people who looked like him. And I noticed that a lot of his confidants, the people that he kept close to him that he liked to advance, were also white men. And so I think that there was a bias that was happening there as well. I am a pretty outspoken individual, but I also was really good at what I did. But I could tell it was almost like he felt maybe even threatened by me.
Sure.
And I made it a point when he would ask my manager the question to lean forward and respond before my manager had an opportunity to. And it's almost like physically, do you see me? Yeah. Can you see that I am in this room and that I am the one leading the work? Yeah, it was a challenge.
I've had a few conversations on the show where we talked about the impact of those things. Now, the funny thing is let me ask a quick question. How long ago was that?
Oh, gosh. When he was leading the organization, so this was probably in 2013?
Okay, so we're looking at least about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
When I ask the question, and this is another reoccurring theme, is when I ask people their worst experience, it's always 10, 20, even 30 years ago.
Wow.
And we're not talking about a bad day or a bad experience. Now we're talking about trauma at this point. And if this is too personal, how did that affect you mental health-wise?
Oh, that's a really, really good question. And I have to say, I had developed the skills and the self-awareness, emotional self-awareness, as well as the reinforcement and mentorship and loved ones and support system to be able to voice that feeling of being unseen. And so I'm thankful that I had the tools by the time I reached that point. Otherwise, it would have made me question my innate value. It would have made me question, okay, well, maybe I don't have a right to be in these rooms. Maybe I'm not supposed to be speaking up. Oh, I need to be listening more to him. I think that it would have had that type of impact on me. But I'm so fortunate that I had developed that support system. I had the tools and have been practicing them, and also had planted a seed of my own innate value, and that I am supposed to be in every room that I walk into for my mom, and that I can do and be anything. And so I got a lot of the goods from a lot of different areas of my life, which I'm grateful for.
And I love hearing that, because there's a lot of people that don't have that support system, where they know they're great at their job, and yet feeling that undervaluedness day in and day out, and then you become not yourself anymore.
Totally.
I've talked about it on the show before. I was in a room we were doing a values exercise, and there was this woman at another table beside me, and she put her hand up at the end after we'd done this traditional values exercise. What are your top 10, blah, blah, blah. What was shocking to me was she did her values were different at home than different at work. So I'm like, okay, so let me get this straight. Your family's important when you leave work, but once you come to work, they're not important anymore. She was a completely different person when she walked through the door or turned on the computer, because your value, we both know, should never change. So that scares me. Like, I love your story, but I also feel bad for those that don't have that experience and have to go along to get along and become a different person to conform to a horrible toxic culture, a horrible leader. So let's change that. Let's get into more of a positive conversation, because we're going to get enthusiastic about change. So this is your message. This is your focus. This is your research. This is what you're trying to move the needle on. What the hell is change enthusiasm?
What is it, Cassandra?
What are we even talking about here?
So I tell you, Russell, when I tell people that I teach change enthusiasm, I wrote the book on change enthusiasm. My company is called Change Enthusiasm Global, and they're going through tough change. They roll their eyes and they say, get out of here. I don't need your enthusiasm. I am having a tough time right now. Don't talk to me about all this excitement. And so I have to reframe and let you know that change enthusiasm is a 3-step mental framework, and it starts with the difficult emotional energy that change inspires. The frustration, the anger, the anxiety, the fear, the guilt, the shame, the devastation, the grief, the sense of loss. That is A signal, it is emotional energy, it is energetic entities, it's a resource, it's data. And it's commonly inspired when we go through change. Change is difficult. It is very often difficult because it's colored by these difficult emotions, but in change lies opportunity, and in change lies opportunity for growth and evolution. And so change enthusiasm, again, it's a step mindset. Step one is a signal. It's acknowledging, having that emotional awareness. I'm feeling frustrated in this moment. A new announcement just came out. I'm frustrated with it. I'm anxious. I'm fearful. Recognize and allowing that energy to exist. It's about knowing you. How does fear show up in your body? How does frustration show up? What happens physiologically in your body, right? And being aware of those emotions being there and allowing them to exist. Not suppressing them, not trying to ignore them, not trying to run away from them, but allow them to inform you and actually take an inventory on feeling all these emotions, about having that language, right? And then the second step is the opportunity. Once you've accepted that your signals are there, they exist, you've acknowledged them, you've granted yourself grace. Maybe you've taken a day off so that you can lay on the couch and binge some Netflix and eat some donuts as you're feeling all your grief. But as soon as you can accept they're there, you move into the second step, which is that opportunity. And this is where you're trying to figure out, how can I make this thing, all this stuff that's happening around me, how can that make this work for me instead of against me? How can I find opportunities to learn more about myself? Learn more about my peers, my colleagues, my business, the industry, the world, my connections, right? What is the opportunity for me here? How can I be better tomorrow than I am today? And then the final step is a choice. This mindset leaves everyone in the seat of power, the seat of choice. It's up to you how you experience change. It's up to you how you navigate, how you influence, how you inspire through change. And so that's the final step, because through the power of choice, you can start to transform that emotional energy. Start moving maybe from resentment to being intrigued, right, or curious, and ultimately moving to those growth-sustaining emotions like anticipation and joy and gratitude and enthusiasm. But enthusiasm is the promise. It's the promise of the practice. And oftentimes it takes years having this emotional awareness, understanding the frustration is there, going through the opportunity, making the choice. And over time, the more that you practice this, you'll find you'll spend more time in the growth-sustaining emotions of change. Something will hit. You'll feel the frustration. Oh, I am pissed off in this moment, but you know what? I'm going to take a beat. I am going to go get on the couch and I'm going to eat pizza and donuts. But I know when I wake up tomorrow, I'm in my moment of opportunity and I have the power to choose how I show up. And so, yeah, it's a practice. It's a mental framework. You have to practice it. It's not a one and done.
So you were talking about how eloquently, I won't lie, it was eloquent. And then I don't want to change. And I get that. I see that. But the problem is that people will bring up, but it's another change. People are becoming so overwhelmed by change. We seem to be doing so much change right now that having that time for ourselves, A, doesn't feel like we even have that time. But second, it's, I can do change. I'm actually really good at change. Not 17 changes in 3 years. Like, I just need a beat. But that's not happening. That is, we're not allowed to have this. How can we still nurture enthusiasm when we feel like we're just getting run over by a truck every 5 minutes?
Oh, it's such a good question. And that is the reality of change today. And I say so often, a part of our philosophy at Change Enthusiasm Global is that change has changed, right? We used to think about change as an episodic event. There's a clear beginning and a clear end, and we always think about the change curve. Where are you on the change curve? When you're dealing with 17 different changes at the same time, the curve is completely irrelevant. Which curve are you talking about, you know? And so it's less about managing the change and understanding a curve. It's more about that intersection of change and emotion. When you're in it, you're feeling the frustration. What is the mindset that you're practicing? What is the skill set that you're embodying? And what are the tools that you're using to move you through it? And, you know, in today's times, so much energy and effort and focus is given to resilience and empowering and elevating those who we see as resilient. But I think there's a danger. There's a pitfall in thinking about resiliency. So often people believe that resiliency is you fall down, you get back up, you keep moving. You fall down, you get back up, you keep moving. You fall down, you get back up, you keep moving. Constant movement. I like to think of resilience as a muscle, and I liken it to a physical muscle, right? And when we're building our physical muscles, and I was a D1 athlete at Georgia Tech, did shot put and discus, so I lifted a lot of weights. You break that muscle down one day, right? And you're lifting, you break that body group down. And then the next day you rest. You rest that body group so that it can rebuild the muscle fibers. Everything that got torn down, it's rebuilding, and that's where the strength comes. And then the next day, you break it down again. The same is true in change. When you go through change, there's a strain, right? You're frustrated, it's difficult, it's hard, but then you get yourself back up. And then you have to take time for respite and reflection. What have I learned? Over these past several weeks, over these past months, what have I learned? How have I grown? How have I become better? And it's those reflections that become seeds of trust, such that when you fall down again, you're getting up to explore, what have I learned? What have I just learned from this? Taking that rest, and then you move forward, right? You fall down, you're getting back up to understand, what have I learned? You do the reflection, and then you move forward, right? So often we forget the reflection and the respite. And that's how change fatigue happens, right? That's not true resilience, because the resilient strength is never getting built. You're just going. You know what I mean?
Well, I hear this a lot from an individual standpoint. I hear what you're saying, but we suck at this.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing the stats around mergers and acquisitions, and I use mergers because I know that's your background as well, is mergers, you cannot do a bigger change in most organizations than a merger. But this is all relative no matter the scope of the thing. But change still is a failure in a lot of ways. I think the stat was 70 to 90% of mergers are unsuccessful.
Yeah.
Where are we getting this wrong? And I'm looking at it from an organizational level.
Sure.
As an individual, we can work on that resilience, but the organizations seem to be failing.
Yeah. And I think it's a matter of being in tune with the change readiness of the organization. And, we study the intersection of change and emotion in our research all over the world. What are the common emotions that employees experience in going through change? What drives resistance? Effective strategies to mitigate that? And what we've discovered are these 6 skills that are so foundational when moving through change. One of the biggest ones is communication, right? And so often leaders fall short in their communication strategy. And it can't just be you dispersing information when you think they need to hear it. It's also creating avenues for employees to feedback what's working, what's not working, where they're seeing blind spots, what are their ideas. Have two-way street, right? Two-way communication. We talk about self-development, emotional self-awareness on the leader side, them knowing themselves, practicing some confident vulnerability, authenticity, them being their full authentic self, creating the courageous container for those around them to do the same, the power of agility, gratitude, and empathy, right? It's those skills that historically have been called soft. Even I myself have called them soft at one time. But I now know, having done this work for, 5+ years, and obviously being in the workforce for 15 years, going through a lot of acquisitions, it's some of the toughest skills that you can develop. I'm a chemical engineer. I have designed batch reactors and systems to scale up huge vats of shampoo and really, really complex technology. That takes hard skills. And now I'm in the business of emotions and human connection. This is the most difficult work I've ever done, but it's the most rewarding. These skills are critical. And so I think, the failure of these organizations and these big mergers is forgetting the human element. Most importantly, the power of emotions, the power that emotion has to thwart your change success. And so it's about arming your leaders and the workforce with the mindset, the skill set, and the toolkit so that you can use that emotional energy, so that it doesn't stall you or thwart you, but rather accelerates your change efforts.
A problem I see with a lot of leaders that are leading that change is they're looking at where we're trying to get to. How does legacy play a part of this? Because we are moving in a direction. Say, I'll use an example of a reorg or a merger of, by doing this, we're going to be able to do that. But we did something differently before that people are very happy about, or even if it was crappy before, people did enough work to do loopholes that it works for them.
Yeah.
But that's all gone now. We're now into the future. Legacy seems to have to be respected a bit. Even if we want this, we have to give a little love for the work that was before. Even if it was crap, they're still there.
Yeah.
Right? How does that show up in your research and how your conversations?
For me, that sounds like appreciation. It's about appreciation for the road that's been traveled, appreciation for all of the work that has gone into getting individuals, the organization, the business to where it is now, celebrating that, and then pulling forward everything that got you to where you're at, and that will continue to be important moving forward. And in that, there's congruence, and there's something that employees can hold on to, and it doesn't feel like their entire world is changing. And so I think that there's opportunity when these big, big changes are first being announced to invite these spaces for grief to exist, to invite these spaces to acknowledge and recognize the strength, the power, the know-how, the individuals, the energy that got you to this point, and everything that will still be required to move you forward as you move towards, that new vision. But yeah, there's such power in creating those spaces for the grief to happen. I don't think we talk about grief enough in the workplace, right? That sense of loss. And it's huge when you think about mergers and acquisitions, because I lose a culture that I knew. I'm literally like losing individuals that I used to work with because maybe they're not going to be a part of the merger. So I'm losing these connections. I'm losing knowing what I'm supposed to do every single day. I'm losing knowing who I'm working for and working with. There's a lot of loss. And so there needs to be space created for this grief to flow. Something that we do with the client organizations is we go through listening sessions and understand what are the narratives, what are the stories as you think about change. It's a lot less of a cultural assessment and more of a cultural discovery. We have world-class journalists on staff interviewing individuals to get the stories, to build out the narratives, right? These individual stories that are then painting the picture of overarching narratives that then drive the belief and the behavior of the organization. Understand what that is so that we know what needs to change and get altered to actually get to this new vision.
And that leads to my next question was, and you've kind of half answered it a bit, is how do you know it's not working?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know it's not working if you set up very hard, fast, this is what success looks like, and you're not actually attaining those results. So, very clear, black and white, and I'm all for the standard blocking and tackling of traditional change management. I think there's still a place for it. I think it's still very important. It's not what we do at Change Enthusiasm Global. We are compensating for where traditional change management falls down. It's great to have the key metrics to understand what success looks like, because you're able to then grade yourself to know if you're moving the needle and knowing you're making the progress that you need to make. But there also needs to be this other aspect of the emotions and the human element, and living in a very dynamic world of change being constant all the time. But yeah, and when you think about communication and if you might be falling down, a thing that we invite clients to do is to actually get a survey out to the workforce. How do you like to receive information? Do you want to see it in email? Would you prefer having little short videos? Do you want to have a big town hall? Do you just want to have this one-on-one with your manager, small teams? How do you like to get the information? If they have told you this is the way I like to receive it, and then you give it that way, they're more to actually listen and read it or watch it or listen to it, right? And so it's that two-way street, and really being step and foot engaged with the workforce, not thinking of this as this thing that is going to go off and achieve this vision that I have, but something you need to get enmeshed into, that you need to understand, that you need to partner with, that needs to work with you to move forward.
Is that also how you're addressing diversity? Because Boomer is going to address this change a lot differently than a Gen Y, Gen Z, Z, still Canadian.
All good. Yeah, it's interesting. So I talked about the research we did across a lot of different generations, right? Huge generational breakout. And what we have discovered, especially, I'll talk about resistance to change. Resistance is prevalent across all generations. Here in America, 41% of Americans will self-identify as being resistant to change. 56% of us think our coworkers are. So it's real, but it's also relative, because we like to point like this, it's not me, it's you, right? So for me, it tells me that resistance is real, but it's also relative. So it's about getting curious. How am I showing up? Getting curious about if you see resistance in another. So resistance is prevalent across all generations. Yeah. And it's all rooted in fear. The reason for the fear, the thoughts bringing awareness to the fear, differs per generation. So for older generations, it's, I am in my zone of comfort. I have been doing this for years. I am great at it. I am a sought after expert. I do it well. Why are you trying to change it? Especially when I don't even have that much longer to go in the workforce. I don't want to change. I'm very comfortable. And so it's a fear of stepping outside that zone of discomfort. For younger generations, it's a fear of falling down, looking stupid, not having all the right answers. And so there's a concern of, if I say this, how will I be looked upon, right? Because I always want to be that bright, shining star. But it's still fear. It's still fear. And that's why I always invite people to do that kind of low risk learning, that low risk area of being in that zone of discomfort, where you can build a muscle memory of feeling discomfort and being on the growth edge, such that when it hits you in work or any other aspect of life, I have been here before, I've experienced this before, and it was difficult, but I grew because of it.
So say somebody's listening to us talk right now.
Sure, let's hope. At least one.
At least three. My mom is so
My mom's on
listening.
It too.
Perfect.
We got two.
Perfect.
Love it.
And they're like, that's great. And I agree with everything you're saying. But what do I do with this? Because my organization isn't prepared to take these 3 steps.
Oh, go to changeenthusiasmglobal.com.
Oh, there you go. Good plug. Good plug.
No, but seriously, it starts with you.
Yeah.
It starts with you listening. And the first aspect of change enthusiasm, the skill set, It's about self-awareness and how you're showing up. When I think about leadership and the way that I personally define it, you can lead from anywhere that you sit in an organization, from anywhere you sit in life, because someone who has the ability to lead simply possesses the power to influence another to follow. And you can do that from wherever you sit. And so when you get in tune with you, when you are getting curious about, your own emotional energy, what you're excited about, what you're jazzed about, what you don't like, where your strengths lie, where your passions are, and you're able to show up beaming that authentic light just a little bit brighter, people will see it and people will notice it. And when you start role modeling that vulnerability, role modeling that emotional self-awareness, role modeling crystal clear communication, two-way street communication, empathy, appreciation, agility, people will take notice. And, that there's a lot of power in that. And you'll start getting people who want to follow because you're going to be role modeling this. And the other thing is offer your success stories. Especially this is a great way in coaching up and sharing, I've been practicing, I've been experimenting with this behavior. And this is how it's showing up. And it's actually working really well. And it might entice them or incentivize them. Maybe that's something that I can try as well. But it always starts with you. Role model it, embody it.
I'm going to wrap it up with the last question I have to ask, which is,
You have to.
It's policy at this point. What's one simple thing people can do right now to improve those relationships at work?
I am double down on what I just said. Get to know you first. Come to know you a bit better. Increase that emotional self-awareness, and then strive for you to show up a little bit more yourself, a little bit more of your fullest self-expression. And then seek to invite that within it. Find one individual. Maybe it's somebody like the way that I felt all those years ago, did not feel seen. Maybe it's somebody in your organization who you think might not feel seen. Go out of your way to engage with that person and let them know, I see you and I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for this, Cassandra.
It was great, man.
And we are done. Wrapped up. Another episode of Relationships at Work, your guide to building workplace connections and avoiding leadership blind spots. Thank you so much for being here. I always appreciate your support and your time. You don't just give that out willingly. You're actually being proactive in your leadership learning, your curiosity, your understanding of impact in the workplace. So I really, really appreciate you taking that time. If you like what you hear, I highly encourage you to share it with others. I honestly think leadership has some challenges, and it's conversations like these and in other episodes that might actually move the needle around mindset, around understanding how leaders can be a lot more human for the humans they're responsible for. If you know somebody who would really get a kick out of this, find value out of this, please share it in a conversation, an email, text message, what have you. It's all really, really appreciated and just helps the show grow. Thank you so much for your time. Take care.